Actually, okay, isa pa pala, isa pa. Ito, isa pa. Okay, may isa pa ako. Kasi sabi ninyo, inimita nyo ako sa Kapihan. Siyempre, may gift ako sa bawat isa sa inyo. Kung may hindi nakakuha, ibig sabihin hindi kayo binigyan ni Sheridan. So, lahat dapat mag-uwi ng kape. Ito'y hindi basta-bastang kape. Ito'y kapeng kwentong pandemic. Okay, anong ibig ko sabihin? Sa Antique may kape. Sa upland ng Sibalom. Sibalom is a mountain municipality. Nung panahon ng pandemya, ang nag-lockdown, ang Nestle na buwibili ng tunay-tunelada ng green beans mula sa aming coffee farmers ay huminto. Dahil lockdown, dahil kumonte siguro ang sales for whatever reason. So, takbo sa akin ang mga coffee growers and they said, tulungan nyo kami. And so, I ended up buying, would you know, Elisa, no, you're new, who would know, Jean? Would you know hanggang ilan na ang nabili kong green beans mula sa Sibalom and sa Kulasi coffee growers? Do you have an idea? No. Do you have an idea? Anyone?
Miss Margaret po is nandun.
No one knows. No one knows? Cherie? Okay. I have purchased at least 1 ton, isang tonelada ng green beans. Hindi naman kaagad, pero 100 kilograms, right? Kilos hanggang... And ang ginagawa, so mula sa bundok, binababa, dinadala by truck to Metro Manila at pinapa-dry at saka roast sa Eco Store kay Chitwan na eksperto sa coffee at sinusuri niya. At sabi niya, it's very, very good coffee. Ngayon, sabi niya, ano kung ilalagay natin sa packaging? Sabi ko, hindi ako marunong mag-packaging, hindi ako malaman sa bibili nito. So, di ba maganda? So, ginawa ko yung packaging. Parang antique patajong yung boundaries, tapos antique coffee. Tapos sabi nila, yung mga hindi alam, mga foreigners na merong antique na province, antique, kala antique coffee. Bakala nila antico na yung coffee. Anyway, kung basahin nyo yung nakasulat, who can read it? Because I don't have my glasses. Come here, girl. What is your name? What is your name?
Hello, I'm Fariza.
Teresa, can you read the small letters?
Upland coffee farmers from Antique share their passion for good coffee, guided by indigenous knowledge, training, dedication, and excellence. Our coffee farmers work hard to ensure you get the best coffee bean experience that is uniquely from Antique, where the mountains meet the sea.
Okay, very good. Next time, when I do my labels pala, palakihan ko yung words because impossible, I cannot read it. So, that's it. What did you read? This or this?
The small print.
Ito. Okay. So, this is Antique coffee. When you, kailangan, magpa-grind kayo. So, hindi ko na kayang iregalo yung grinder. So, either bumili kayo ng grinder or ipag-grind ninyo or ako dahil ako'y naniniwala sa slow food, mismong bayuhan ng Ipugaw, kami, nung pandemya pa, ay nag-grind. At mismong kami ang nagluluto, nagsasaing, ang sarap ng amoy. So, kaninong kape ito? So, meron akong kape sa inyong lahat. So, isa pa sa aking mga advokasya ay slow food. Ako'y sumusuporta sa mga slow food movement. Anong ibig sabihin ng slow food? Yung mga gumagamit ng organic na mga resources para sa pagkain, yung mga bumibili sa mga maliliit na farms, family farms na malapit sa kanila. Okay, so na, pagod na ako. Okay. Before we start,
ito yung coffee talaga, the coffee mo. Cellphone holder. Ang kudo yung 8 years na kami. Feature testing, 8th anniversary.
yeah, dati nandun kayo sa hotel, Luneta Hotel. Yes, maganda. I like it na ginagawa niyo siya sa mga maliliit na restaurant na may heritage. Right? Hindi sa magagarang hotel na mahal na mga ballroom. Maganda ito. Sinusuportahan niyo ang small business sa mga heritage areas.
And small talk.
Ito, maganda ito, pero alam mo, kung sino man gumawa, pagsabihan natin na huwag na magbalot sa plastic, dahil hindi naman kailangan nakabalot. Kasi imagine, itong plastic na to, unless you reuse it, you can reuse it, but it will go to waste. Imagine, we are one of the top plastic pollutants in the world. So yung gumawa nito, magandang ginawa niya, no? Pwede, bamboo ito, maganda. Pati yung ballpen, very nice. Pero siguro yung wrapper niya maganda, recycle na lang, or pwede paper, recycle paper. Nag-lecture ko sa Legarda.
Yes, ma'am. That's a good lesson.
Good lesson, ma'am. Anyway, I don't need any further introduction to our special guest. 8th anniversary ng Kapihan Manila Bay, and on the occasion of our UN United Nations International Women's Month, she will cap our month-long celebration of this special month for women. And as she had already started the, sabi ko sana show because she's a veteran and our colleague in media before she turned to politics. And now she is walking the talk and spearheading, in fact, the movement and the advocacy, the global movement and advocacy for climate change. And before, we said, we used to tease her. I was telling them a while ago, an anecdote. When we were together in Maldives, she invited us to
30 years ago.
in the middle of the vice presidential campaign, we left the campaign trail right before. And we are telling her, Mom, just run as Senate President to become the first woman Senate President of the Philippines. And she staunchly believes that she can do better and much more if she runs for the vice president. Yes. And growing up, she continued on with her advocacy without any titles, without any job titles at that time, and she pursued her advocacy, and she is considered as the United Nations champion, ambassador for climate change, Senate President pro tempore, Loren Legarda.
Thank you. I think 2009, that was when we went to Maldives, yes, and I met then Maldives President Mohammed Nasheed and his cabinet.
Yes.
And I gave them a lecture on climate change and disaster risk reduction.
One woman lecture.
Yes, with the UN.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, UN group. I remember that was 13 years ago. So thank you for having me. Congratulations on your 8th anniversary. I'm glad that you select small restaurants with heritage flavor, and I'm glad to join you again after 3 years. No,
Yes, ma'am.
2021, 2 years.
And ma'am, as I introduced Maldives, which at that time was already being threatened to be lower than the sea, and in fact they depopulated already. They took their residents out of Maldives already because it's sinking. And 2 decades later, the same. I mean, the fate is befalling every other countries now. And like a prognosticator, you are ahead of your times. We are now suffering at present in the Philippines the effects of global warming, interspersed with La Nina. And now, as Senate President pro tempore, are we ahead of these challenges in climate change?
Matagal na natin nararamdaman ang mga epekto ng pagbabago ng klima. The issue of climate change is not new. It's been here for many decades. In a way, I am glad that many have latched on to the issue of climate change and the climate crisis, especially during the pandemic, when there was greater awareness and exchange of knowledge on the climate crisis and how it is connected with every aspect of our lives, especially the health of our people, especially the environment, which includes the water that we drink and the air that we breathe and the mountains and the seas that produce the food that we eat. And so, tama si Ichu, hindi ako tumigil mula sa simula pa ng aking termino noong 1998 at bago pa yon nung ako ay mamamahayag gaya nyo. So lalo lang umigting ang aking resolve, ang aking advokasya na palaganapin ang kaalaman tungkol sa pagbabago ng klima dahil nga ito'y nakakaapekto sa mga vulnerable nations na gaya ng Pilipinas, gaya ng Maldives na maliit pa ng populasyon pero bumabagsak na or bumababa na because of rising sea level. And so we know that climate change is every inch a gender issue as well because women and climate, women and health, that's really interconnected sa ating pang-araw-araw na buhay. Hindi ba ang nanay ng tahanan ang siyang mag-iigib ng tubig o maghahanap ng pagkain sa palengke o saan man sa bakuran para sa kanyang mga anak? Hindi ba ang nanay ng tahanan ang siyang mahihirapan evacuation centers ng mga tents, walang pamilya, or ang kababaihan na single, hiwalay sa ibang mga grupo because there are privacy and gender issues. So, sa panahon man ng sakuna, ng disaster, sa panahon man ng pang-araw-araw na buhay, ang nararanasan natin sa pang-araw-araw, bagyo man o tag-init o sang araw-araw lang na mga hamon gaya ng kakulangan ng potable water or mga sakit na dulot ng pagkain na hindi organic ang pinanggalingan o galing sa mga epekto ng kemikal sa ating mga kinakain or maski na ang pagtaas ng sea level na nakakababa o nakakaapekto sa mga seaside or coastal areas. So, marami tayong maaring hindi napapansin pero ito yung mga epekto ng pagbabago ng klima sa ating buhay. So itong problema, matagal na natin alam. We've known this for a long time. But what can we do in our everyday lives? There are big things we can do and we've been doing that through policies and laws that I've authored in my 4 terms in the Senate. But there are simple everyday things we can do. Number 1, buying local, supporting local. You ask me, what's the connection? Because the carbon footprint is lower, hindi ba? Pag hindi na kailangan liparin ang bibilin mo, pag nandyan sa malapit sa'yo, hindi ba? So ang ginamit na fuel para sa transportasyon, sa kinakain mo o sinusuot mo, ay mas kaunti. Ang pagkain na iyong itatanim sa iyong bakuran o maski sa iyong paso na alokbati or malunggay, when you grow your own food, then una, nakakatipid ka. Pangalawa, nagiging sustainable ang pagkain ng iyong pamilya. Pangatlo, ay organic pa ang iyong kinakain kung ang iyong food waste ay ginagawang organic fertilizer. Ang ating paggamit ng renewable energy imbes na diesel or coal, yan ay makakatulong dahil alam natin ang mga sanhi ng global warming ay dulot ng fossil fuel or pagbubuga ng fossil fuel, ng greenhouse gas emissions sa ating kapaligiran. So, ang issue ng pagbabago ng klima ay isang existential issue, ay isang humanitarian issue, and I think the right to a clean environment is a basic human right. The right to clean potable water is a basic human right. The right to the clean, fresh air that we must breathe is a basic human right. The right to food that's healthy is a basic human right. And so I try my very best to walk my talk in my everyday life where I collect the water from the rain and use it to water my plants that I grow and vegetables that I grow. I, as much as possible, wear and support and buy local, and not just buy, but encourage and support local industries so that there are rural livelihoods in vulnerable communities and rural areas that we support. I also try to buy local in terms of food and promote backyard industries to provide livelihood for our people. And I have shifted to not using single-use plastic, so I don't want to contribute to the plastic waste in our country, where in 2021 it's been said that the Philippines is one in the top 3 of the biggest plastic polluters in the world, where even the fish that we eat, when you open some of them, they have microplastic inside. And you know, plastics have chemicals. So we may not be able to do away totally, completely, but at least single-use plastic. Then I also have not used plastic bottles. I use my own bamboo thermos, so I bring my own water, and I don't use, and everything. Pag hindi nyo nauubos ang tubig na iniinom nyo, una, abusin. Pag hindi, ilagay nyo sa halaman, or at least ilagay sa makakagamit. Yeah. So these are everyday things. Growing your own food, doing your own organic compost from the food waste or from dry leaves or twigs, walking when you can walk, except of course it's very hot, which is also good for your health, and buying and supporting local, and even using waste, because I espouse zero waste. We use not just waste of food, but also waste in tela. In my office, back and forth, we use our paper, and then we put it together para sa mga recycled na mga tote bags. So, lahat sana may gamit. And itong binigay nyo sa akin, pagkatapos nito, I will flatten this box, and I put boxes together para magkaroon ng mga lagayan ng pagkain. So, when I see something, and even let's say, yung kape na binigay ko sa inyo, look at the abaca thread. That's an industry I revived in Antique, kasi meron kaming abaca, so ang thread namin abaca. Hindi ako bumibili yung mga plastic or straw na ribbon, and after you open that, so reuse the abaca thread. You can use it for a gift, right? So, ayoko din, ha?
Yung lalagyan.
Yes, oo.
Single use?
Yung lalagyanan yan ang baka hindi single use or papel siya.
Papel.
Pagkatapos
It's paper.
niya, baka pwedeng gamitin ng muli.
Oo, paper.
Yeah. Okay. So, I've said too much, but yes, hindi ko binibitawan ang issue ng pagbabago ng klima dahil ito'y napapanahon, hindi lamang ngayon, kundi sa nakaraang mga dekada at lalo na sa mga darating na panahon.
Yes, ma'am. I know your dedication and heartfelt work for environment. But ma'am, considering that you have been the primary steward of the Philippine representation before the COP and Conference on Paris, and the Philippines is the least contributor to the pollution. I think it's only 0.03, and up to now, so many years have passed. The supposed carbon tax that will be giving aid to the Philippines for those pollutants, major pollutants like China and the United States, which constitute 50% of the world pollution, have not delivered on their promise.
We are a signatory to the Paris Agreement.
Yes.
Under the UNFCCC, there is such a thing as the Green Climate Fund,
Yes.
which industrialized nations should contribute to. The Philippines already accessed projects from the Green Climate Fund. In my previous years as a member of the board of the GCF, I have sat on the board where at least one project for Pag-asa for early warning system was awarded to the Philippines. We already are a beneficiary from the Green Climate Fund. It could be more, it could be better. I think our government agencies and even the private sector could apply more green projects, but I know that it's a very arduous process. Masalimuot ang proseso para ma-access ang pondo sa Green Climate Fund. But the Philippines has already accessed it through a project of Pag-asa.
Yes. And on the part of the Philippines, I know that you and Congressman Salceda are pushing for that carbon tax, to tax on the carbon pollutants, but it has not taken off the ground from the legislative mill.
No, I think there's a pending bill on carbon tax, but it's difficult to legislate new taxes, especially now during times of pandemic recovery. So, perhaps what we can do to focus on climate change adaptation would be just to encourage people to go green in their daily lives rather than impose new taxes. I would not like to impose new taxes. That would be a pass on to the consumers. To tax those who still utilize fossil fuels, if it will be perhaps the industries, but we still don't like to inflict additional burden on industry and business as well because we are in a pandemic recovery mode, so to speak, in our economy.
But you have already passed the single-use plastics, di ba? Meron ding tax ano doon.
Hindi pa napapasa yung ban on single-use plastic, but there's the extended producer's responsibility that was passed the time of Senator Villar. But the ban on single-use plastic hindi pa na ipapasa.
What's keeping the bill? Marami
As
bang
both houses of
anti-climate?
Congress, hindi pa napapasa.
Marami sa yung colleagues sa Congress are not really educated to climate change. Sabi na, it's not a gut issue. That's not...
I think ngayon mulat na lahat. Yes, mulat na lahat. In my fourth term, I can see their knowledge, their interest, their support to the issue of climate. And even when I deliver my policy statements on climate, yes, they are very much interested and practicing as well in their lives. So it's different now because of the pandemic.
The realization came after the pandemic na. And while we are having this pandemic, you also have not, as you mentioned a while ago before our press con, you have undertaken projects and pushed for legislative measures to enable the Philippines cope with the pandemic. Are these measures still in place after the pandemic or just for pandemic purposes only?
You mean livelihood projects to
Yeah.
cope with the pandemic? Patuloy because
Yung stimulus package in particular, are you still pushing for those continuing,
nationally or in my province?
speaking for your province first?
I think we are continuing the projects for capital assistance, for pandemic recovery for their small business, patuloy namin ginagawa through government programs. Because pandemic or no pandemic, there are many challenges for Filipino families. And lalo na ngayon, maski na nandiyan pa yung pandemya, COVID is still there and challenges in healthcare are still there. The issues of open defecation is still there in rural areas. The issue of potable water is still there. The issue of rivers and lakes that were previously clean but are now being rendered dirty because of plastic waste and other kinds of waste is there. So the assistance to small business and to our farmers and fisher folks must continue even
Budgeted pa rin,
after
budget.
the pandemic. At least in my province, in Antique, we continue to do that. And even nationally, I'm trying to do nationally what I started in Antique, support for our small fisher folks and rural business and micro enterprises and farmers. Let's say the challenge of the oil spill, where it affected 11 municipalities in Mindoro
Antique
and
included.
a barangay in one municipality in Antique, yes, and threatens Palawan as well and the Verde Island Passage, which would cover
Batangas.
the province of Batangas. So there are many challenges, even long after the pandemic, where farmers and fisher folks and
We have the charterer is not covered by any accident liability. So how do you intend to address that flaw in the law?
First, my team immediately helped the people of Barangay Semirara in Kaluya last March 8 after the oil spill happened on Feb 28. So we immediately gave livelihood assistance. And last weekend, our team went to Pola in Oriental Mindoro to provide assistance together with the SWD and also to check the impact of the oil spill, and we will be giving help to all the 11 municipalities affected in Oriental Mindoro, including Calapan City. And what I'd like to do is not just a dole out, but long-term livelihood programs, let's say for mangrove rehabilitation, for livelihood for micro enterprises, for fisher folks who were affected by the oil spill, but also to build our capacity how to deal with oil spill disasters such as this. The Coast Guard admitted that we may not have the complete facilities for this, and that is the reason why they've asked other countries like Japan and the US to help us. It is indeed an ecological disaster. It is a disaster that affects the livelihood of Filipinos, and we must learn the technological know-how. We must equip ourselves with the equipment ready, not just with our Coast Guard, but with the other agencies and even local governments by coastal areas must have easy access. Hindi dahilan na walang pera. As I mentioned in our hearing, we have more than 20 billion pesos in the NDREAM Fund. That is a National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Law of 2010. And we have the funds. And each LGU has a QRF, a Quick Response Fund, and agencies of government also has the QRF and the LDREAM funds. The local governments have the LDREAM, the local DRR funds, and the agencies of government have the QRF or the Quick Response Fund. So funding should not be an issue, but the technological know-how, the capacity building of the Coast Guard and other agencies within the NDREAM so that they know what to do when these disasters happen. And of course, dapat managot naman yung vessel. At dapat siya sa atin, bakit nagka-aksidente ngayon? Natural cause, yeah, the waves, but was it overloaded? At ano ang band-aid solution kaagad pag nangyari yan para hindi na kailangan kumalat at lumaganap gaya nito. So there must be accountabilities. At the same time, it's not just a matter of pinning the blame or pinpointing, but really curing or solving it so that not more areas will be affected by this oil spill disaster.
Para hindi reactive, but more proactive.
Vessels must not be overloaded. Vessels must always check their machines, their engines. Vessels must know when it happens, what to do to immediately contain it, and vessels must be made responsible for any such disasters.
Yesterday, President Marcos himself acknowledged climate change cannot be ignored. Water crisis is looming in the horizon already. And fortunately, I saw in the papers today that the Kaliwa Dam project is now 23% ongoing construction. What else can Congress do? Because I know there's a pending bill at the Department of Water Resources creating it. And in the meantime, the President created the Water Resource Management Office. So how do you reconcile all these things?
You know, we have so many water agencies lodged under different departments, and I have filed the Department of Water bill for many Congresses since my second term. I'm not sure whether that bill, if enacted into law, which will take some time, will really cure the availability of water issue. What we must do is really to be aware of our right to water. What do I mean? There's a 1989 Clean Water Catchment Law where every barangay must be equipped with a rainwater catchment. Is that not a simple measure? That long before I became a senator, there was a law for a rainwater collection. So, is this being implemented by every barangay, by the DILG, and by the DPWH? I do collect rainwater, and I use my rainwater to water the vegetables that I grow. I also filed in my first term the Clean Water Act, where we are responsible for the water that we use, and that the water concessionaires must be responsible for water systems and sewage and septage and all of this. So
What is that law, ma'am?
2003 pa yan, the Clean Water Act. So meron tayong Clean Water Act, meron tayong Rainwater Collection Law, yung
1989.
Clean Water Act. I'm a co-author, yung Rainwater Collection, hindi pa ako senador noon. And then we have, to very important, the Ecological Solid Waste Management. 1999, that was my first term in the Senate. Simple, paghihiwalay ng basura sa nabubulok at hindi nabubulok. The segregation of waste at source, recycling, and composting. What does it mean? Huwag natin itapon.
Sa tubig.
Pagkatapos nitong buksan ko, hindi ko itatapon ito sa tabing dagat, tabing ilog, at hihiwalayin ko ang basura. Kasi pag hinihiwalay ang basura, makikita nyo na hanggang 80% ay maaring magamit o meresikulo at 20% lang ang kokolektahin ng garbage collectors na mapupunta sa landfill. At wag na wag magtapon sa kanal, sa ilog, sa lawa, sa karagatan, o maski saan. So let us protect the water and regard our water as our source of life. Huwag natin patayin ang sanhi o nagdudulot ng buhay sa atin. Water is life and we must keep life sacred. Di ba? It's as simple as that. Water is life. That is the livelihood of our fisher folks who bring food to our table. That is the livelihood of many of us who regard water as part of tourism. That is the livelihood of half of the Filipino population. But then again, there are, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, 11 million Filipino families, at least 1/10 of our population, who still do not have access to clean, potable water. And 3.8 billion families all over the world who still don't have access to water because of a growing population and water scarcity. Ibig sabihin, kakulangan ng tubig at dumadami ang mga tao. So, ano ang ating dapat gawin? Huwag natin putulin ang mga puno sa mga bundok na may mga tinatawag na watershed. Yung watershed areas na nadeklara na protected areas, whether by national or local legislation, at maski na hindi pa natatalaga ayon sa batas, pero watershed siya, ay kailangan protektahan. So let us protect our watersheds, which is part of the source of our water. And let us protect our water resources and not make them dumping grounds of our waste products. It's actually simple when you think about it. And all it takes is care. We should care for our environment. Malasakit, di ba, sa ating ginagawa. For me, care, mindfulness, malasakit. Sa bawat galaw natin, ito ba'y makakabuti sa buhay ko, sa buhay ng mahal ko sa buhay, at sa buhay ng mga susunod na henerasyon. So, when you care about your life and those around you and the next generation, then life will really change. So, I also would like to say that in everything we do, we don't necessarily have to see what's the impact on my life. I think the most heroic or ideal act would be when you do something where you do not immediately feel its benefit, but actually are doing it because it will make the life of the next generation better for them.
Pero ma'am, yung in terms of legislation, the Department of Water, ano ang status nun?
It's not yet being heard. Yes,
Kaya nga.
I filed that for many, many terms. It's not yet being heard, but it's really putting under one department all the water agencies because meron tayong mga water bureaus or agencies under DNR, meron din stand-alone agencies na hindi naman under DNR, so it has to be rationalized, but it's not yet moving.
I heard yung sa sa House version, they removed the DPWH kasi sa kanila yung yung mga luwa. And their argument is that flood is not part of the water.
There are many permutations of the bill, but flooding is another issue. During summer months, we lack water. During the rain months, we have too much water. So
Yeah.
really, it's water management. It is reducing disaster risk by managing our sources of water. Flood. Part of the flooding issue is because of solid waste segregation or non-segregation. Bakit mabilis magbaha? Dahil yung daluyan ng tubig ay puno ng basura.
Kaya nga.
Hindi ba? So, pag hindi natin minamanage yung basura, magbabaha. And another cause of flooding is soil subsidence, over-extraction of groundwater. And also the cutting of trees in watershed areas dahil nagdo-soil erosion. Okay, ito ang bundok. Puro puno dyan. Pag ulan ng ulan, ay pag maraming puno, sasagipin ng kanyang mga roots yung ulan. Pag kinalbo mo ito at wala ng puno, pag bumagsak ang ulan, tuloy-tuloy na siya sa lawa or sa kapatagan. At yung soil niyan, wala ng roots, tuloy-tuloy siya at magbabaha.
So ma'am, you are satisfied in the transition, yung Water Resource Management Office muna under the Office of the President will supplant the Department of Water that you have been pushing.
We see, I hope that it works. Yes, we will cooperate. We will see how the setup of that agency works and how it manages all the water agencies, bureaus in the different agencies of government. But then again, whatever structure you put in government, whether it's under one agency, under the OP, or under a newly created law, it's each of us. It's how we live. It's how we implement already existing laws. As I said, we have laws. Clean Water Act,
Just
Ecological
implement it.
Solid Waste Management,
Enforce
Rainwater Collection Act. Implement it strictly. Have the discipline. I see it in my own life, in my own barangay. Pag kumukolekta ako ng tubig at ginagamit ko ang tubig ulan, syempre, bumababa ang aking water bill. Diba? Ganun yun eh. Pag nagtatanim ako, mas sumisip-sip siya ng tubig at meron pa akong maskak, madaling kainin na nandyan lang sa aking bakuran. It really makes so simple common sense. Pag kinakalbo ang kabundukan, syempre yung lupa, guguho, pag gumuho, pupunta sa lawa. Ang lawa, magiging, it will become, tataas ang kanyang level sa baba. Aapaw ang tubig, babaha.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the commercial of my polo. It's really a sense of common sense.
Yes, yes. It is really common sense. And let's just put it, caring and mindfulness. Malasakit sa ating sarili at sa kapaligiran. It's really common sense.
Ma'am, ma-ship naman tayo kanina. Ikaw sinimulan mo yung Kapihan sa Manila Bego with a fashion statement. I saw in your press release yesterday that you have approved at the bicameral a cultural mapping.
Yes.
Bago yan. What's that cultural mapping?
Ang ganda. Ma-excite kayo dito. Kasi hindi pa sigurong marami ang nakakaalam at maraming gumagawa ng cultural mapping. Ang alam natin, mga geographical mapping, hindi ba? Ang pinag-aralan natin sa grade school at high school. Cultural mapping has been passed on BICAM level and we're just finishing it for report when we resume in May.
For
It
ratification.
means for ratification. What is cultural mapping? It means the documentation, the research, the study, the conservation, the preservation of social, economic, heritage.
Kala ko ba cultural lang?
Cultural covers everything. The culture of a people would cover this Ermita district, this heritage building, the heat outside, the informal settlers living in the area, the plaza which used to be there, which is probably not preserved, the people who used to come here in the 60s and 70s, the population now. So cultural mapping would be the research, the study, the documentation, the preservation of the culture of a people, of a place. The place, a street, it would include biodiversity, flora and fauna. It would include built heritage, mga gusali, mga lumang bahay at building, mga statwa, mga monumento. It would also include songs and food and plants and rituals and languages. Do you know that we have more than 100 languages? More than 100 ethno-linguistic groups or indigenous peoples groups. It would include languages and dialects in the remote islands.
So ano tong batas na to?
Itong batas na ito ay nagtatalaga na dapat tayong gumawa ng ating cultural mapping, ang ating pagmamapa, pagdodocument ng mga kaalaman sa ating kultura, sa bawat aspeto ng buhay ng Pilipino.
So walang nakagawa niyan in the past?
Meron na kaming ginawa sa Antique. Sinimulan nito maski na pandemya, UP Visayas sa aking tanggapan on Zoom at saka face-to-face sa 3 taon ng pandemya ay nag-cultural mapping. Nag-training kami sa DepEd teachers ng Antique na siyang sumagawa ng cultural mapping ng probinsya.
So,
meron din ibang mga syudad na maski walang batas ay nagmuna at meron ng cultural mapping.
Ano yan, ma'am? Parang agency that you created, you
It,
task?
no, it will be NCCA pa rin, the National Commission on Culture and Arts
NCCA.
will help
Okay.
local governments to do cultural mapping. Why is cultural mapping important? Para wag natin makalimutan ang ating pinanggalingan so we can build on it and create and even use it for tourism, use it for jobs, para din maprotektahan ang mga lumang gusali na maaring maging parte ng ating pangturismo.
Di ba gawain ng NCAA yan, tsaka NHI?
That's why the NCCA, National Commission on Culture and the Arts, is comprised of various government cultural agencies, and one part of that, one agency, is the NHCP, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, previously called National Historical Institute. So, that is just one. There's another agency called KWF, Commission ng Wikang Filipino. There's another commission called the Archives of the Philippines. There's another commission, other agency called, well, the National Library, National Museum. In fact, I have a board meeting now. Hindi ako nagpunta dahil nandito ako sa inyo. So I asked my lawyer to attend in my behalf. So there are many agencies under the NCCA, and even in the past years, they were already conducting cultural mapping, but it was not mandated by law.
Okay.
Now, when it is a law, it can be promoted more, and hopefully more local governments will engage in cultural mapping, and there could be funding. We could provide annual legislation funding for LGUs who wish to do cultural mapping.
Basta mag-ano sila sa NCAA.
National NCAA, yes.
NCAA.
National Commission, NCCA.
NCCA.
Yes. NCAA basketball yan there.
Pero yan ang mga agencies na lowly ignored, but I make sure that there are reporters to cover when may events sila. Kasi there are so many things that we should be proud of our Filipino heritage.
Yes. Malapit na ang Heritage Month, hindi ba Mayo? Kaya maganda eh. Ngayon, Women's Month. Sa Abril naman, nandiyan ang Earth Day. At sa Mayo, Heritage Month. At sa June naman, ay World Environment Day. Hindi ba ang gaganda ng ating buwan? Sa bawat buwan may dahilan at meron. So, lahat ng mga yan ay ating mga shared advocacy at pinaglalabanan ko mula pa sa aking unang termino at mula pa nung ako'y mamamahayag gaya ninyo. So, I'm happy to report to you the kind of work I do, supporting micro-enterprises, promoting culture, helping rural livelihoods, helping people survive or recover from the pandemic.
Last two questions ko before I open it to the floor. as a woman leader, I know for a fact that you are a reserve officer, Air Force officer, since 1998. Correct me if I'm wrong.
92.
Oh, but NDCP college ka and you became a reserve officer for the Air Force. What is your stand on the ROTC bill? And mamaya pa yung question ko.
I signed the committee report because I want to see the version on the floor for discussion. I'm a reserve officer, so necessarily I must agree with the ROTC because they would enhance the reserved officers. But I talked to the sponsor, Senator De La Rosa, and I said, I want to include amendments because ROTC of decades ago is different from the ROTC of today as proposed. I wanted to include environmental warriors, meaning it should be part of it. Disaster risk reduction, teaching them disaster preparedness and disaster response. Second, climate change adaptation and teaching them not just tree planting, but everything we talked about today, including conservation of water. So he agreed. He said he will look at my amendments and agrees in concept that for environment and climate and disaster response and preparedness will be part of ROTC. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So we can really enhance, update ROTC so that our ROTC the students who will take up ROTC may include lessons on climate and environment and they can be eco-warriors. Yeah, maganda.
Yeah. And my second question to you is, with all of these things, climate change and everything na hindi masyadong binibigyan attention,
Binibigyan na,
Oh.
iba na ngayon.
how can you include that in the charter change? In favor of charter change pa?
No,
I know.
no.
Not even
Not
on
at this
us.
time.
Okay.
No, I think the Senate has made it clear, majority of us, we are not opposed to change. It is a matter of timing. We are in the midst of a sustainable pandemic recovery where the priority is to feed our people and to create jobs for them amid rising inflation. It's a matter of priority, and we have passed economic liberalization laws in the past years, including the
PSA.
yes, Public Service Act, the Retail Trade Liberalization. There are 3 economic measures already passed. It took some time for the government to come up with the implementing rules and regulations. So we see, let's give these laws a chance, how it impacts on the economy of our people. In the meantime, I talk to our people on the ground. I see their needs. Ang kailangan ng tao, murang pagkain. Ang kailangan ng Pilipino, trabaho. Ang kailangan natin, seguridad at peace and order sa ating mga tahanan, sa ating mga komunidad. Wala pa ako nakausap ni isa na ang magsasabi na ang suliraning mga ito ay madudulot o mabibigyan ng kalunasan kung baguhin ang saligang batas. So, for the meantime, no, but we keep an open mind. In the future, we see it's all a matter of need and timing.
Okay, the floor is now open for your question. Please introduce yourself first.
Hello po, good morning po ma'am. Good morning po, Amor Santos po of CNN Philippines. Hi ma'am, good morning. Ay,
Pauline.
mabuti po. Opo, she's still with us po. Ma'am, just a follow-up question on the bill you mentioned earlier, the ban on single-use plastics. You said hindi nga po siya na-pass during the last Congress, and I think Senator Cynthia Villar also filed her own version of the bill. But last Congress, she said it may be impossible daw po to to pass the measure. Ma'am, what are the chances you think na itong batas na ito ay mapasa ngayong Congress?
It's difficult because I guess the lobby of the plastics, it's my advocacy, and it's being done in some LGUs. Some local governments have passed local legislation, ordinances, banning the use of single-use plastic, and some establishments, private, have also passed it. So tanong ko, kung kaya naman ng ibang LGU at kaya ng ibang establishments, bakit hindi kaya ng whole of nation approach? It's a matter of discipline. Pero, tama si Senator Villar, mahirap. Matitigas ang ulo, disiplina.
But
Yes.
this Congress, ma'am, you think it has better chance? You
I'm
said
not sure.
marami nang mas aware yung mga legislators
Yeah,
on
I hope.
environment. Oo.
Our office, Shari, right? Ban on single-use plastic. Pati nga ang sako ng arena, ginagawang blusa ni Shari.
A strong lobby against it by the affected sectors.
Yeah.
Yes po.
So we give the extended producers responsibility law, a new law, a chance. Yeah, let's see how it goes. But even if there's no law, let's live it in our everyday lives. I do it in my office, so there's no reason why the whole Senate cannot do it, or the whole Pasay cannot do it. Ganun lang ako eh. Micro. Let's do it one home at a time. One barangay at a
Model,
time. Yes.
setting a model.
Ma'am, another follow-up question po on charter change kasi po si Senator Robin Padilla sent letters to Senate leaders daw po, including you daw po, ma'am, to hopefully convene a meeting of some members of both houses of Congress this session break about charter change. Ano po bang magiging decision ng Senate leadership about it? And kayo po, ma'am, would you be amenable to that?
As I said, there's a time for everything. And I personally feel that the issue of changing the Constitution may not be here and now. It's not for now. As I said, I'll repeat what I said. Ang ating binibigyan ng pansin ngayon ay ang problema ng gutom, ay ang problema ng kakulangan ng malinis na tubig, ay ang issue ng seguridad ng ating mga pamilya, restoring peace and order, ang issue ng trabaho, higit sa 2 milyon, halos 3 milyon ang walang trabaho at maraming underemployed. We are still reeling from the pandemic. We're in a sustainable pandemic recovery mode, and I would like to focus on food on our tables, on jobs for every Filipino family, on sustainable development, and changing the Constitution for so-called economic provisions, where there are 3 recently passed economic measures that should be implemented by now.
So ma'am, for you po, hindi po muna sana itong meeting na to.
I'm not familiar with any meeting.
So wala ka
Yeah.
pang letter na
Wala pa
receive.
pong
I will
na-receive.
check. There's a letter, I think, pending in my office. I have to read it, but we are on session break. And while I am just here in the country, the others have worked abroad as well or out of town. I am not familiar with any meeting.
Alright po. Ma'am, sorry, one last question po, one last issue po bago ko po ipasa sa iba. Ma'am, may committee report din po kasi si Senator Win on banning POGOs naman po.
Yes, I
We just
signed
want to know, you signed it po, ma'am.
I signed it.
At once, ibaban.
I signed the committee report.
Opo, ma'am, with no reservations, you are fully supporting the call.
Yes, I don't
Immediate?
think, I signed the committee report. I am in agreement with the committee report. It has spawned so many criminal syndicates. And this is illegal in China. So why are we hosting
So
an
immediate ang
illegal
removal.
operation?
Immediate removal.
That is what the committee report. I don't think it was reported on the floor because there's not enough signatures yet.
Thank you po, thank you.
Ang sagot lagi ni ma'am sa charter change, Ecclesiastes 3. Tulad ni President Duterte. Ecclesiastes 3, yung there's a time for everything.
Ma'am Cecil Sorte Felipe po sa Star. Follow up lang po dun sa kayo. Sinasabi kasi ni Senator Angara and sinasabi ni Senator JV Ejercito na yung POGO daw may mga malalaking investment and we should be giving them time na makarecover muna before yung total ban on POGO. Your take on that, ma'am?
Hindi naman napapag-usapan pa sa floor, kaya nga ako pumirma ng committee report para makita ko ang mga diskusyon. While I am against POGOs, and the committee report, I believe, was the immediate ban, there could be phasing out for the legal big POGOs if it will impact on employment. So baka may phasing out yung mga legal, pero syempre illegal dapat stop. At saka, hindi masugpo Ang criminality hanggang noong Pebrero, may mga kidnapping pa among the Chinese. Chinese or Filipino, that's very dangerous. So ang dami ng hamon sa ating seguridad. POGO has become a national security issue, pero hindi pa nga nadidiskusyon sa floor, so pwede naman gawin nga kung may impact sa employment sa mga legal, may phasing out period, diba? Kung hanggang kailan ba yung kanilang legal na kontrata.
Ma'am, on another topic, yung possible meeting of the House and the Senate, ano yung procedure? In the past ba nagkaroon na ng mga ganong pag-meet to discuss yung possible agreement on a certain measure, proposed measure?
The House and the Senate meets, number one, for the state of the nation. Number two, we just met for the bicameral conference committee on the cultural mapping bill. So whenever there's a BICAM of all measures, members of the committees meet. But all members of both houses meeting happens once a year during the State of the Nation.
And yan, yun ma'am sa RCEP, di ba you and SP Subiri are yung nag-sponsor. Do we see na nag-roll na ngayon? Nag-start na po ba na yung process? Okay.
Mahaba ang proseso ng RCEP. Kakaratify lang natin para malaman nyo yung proseso. Una, nag-a-accede, pinipirmahan ng ating gobyerno ang treaty. Pagkatapos ito, tinatransmit ito sa Senado. The Senate is the ratifying body of a treaty or a convention. And the RCEP, the regional cooperation, is it cooperation, Shari? Comprehensive, regional comprehensive economic partnership. Okay. 2018 yata binigay na yan sa Senado. So it took 5 years. And in the previous congresses, hindi ito naratipika. It was given to me, the assignment, a few months ago, and I immediately heard it in a briefing and in a hearing and meetings. So after 2 weeks, we were able to ratify it by a large majority. Now, as to the effects of RCEP, kailangan pa yan maramdaman ng mga industriya, ng negosyante, ng mga magsasaka, ng mga mangingisda. Hindi kaagad na tayo ay nagratipika, kaagad maramdaman na, gumanda na ang presyo ng ganito. Hindi pa. Because meron pa yung paperworks, sasabihin pa ng RCEP, ng DTI, ng DA, sa mga ASEAN nations na miyembro na ng RCEP, ng mga non-ASEAN nations gaya ng bansang Hapon, China, Australia, New Zealand na kami ay nandyan. So there's paperworks and that we have to find out how long it takes and nakatalaga din sa RCEP kailan bababa ang taripa sa produktong ito sa bansang ito. It's more than 1,000 pages of goods and services where tariff lines will be down to zero or so masalimuot, hindi kaagad mararamdaman, ngunit sa tingin ko at base na rin sa pag-aaral, ito'y makakatulong sa ating ekonomiya dahil gaya ng sinabi ko sa sponsorship, tayo na lamang ang bansa sa ASEAN na hindi sumali. And so we seize the opportunity for the betterment of industry and business. But I will also hold hearings on RCEP because nag-create kami, ang Senado, ng committee on RCEP oversight to see what the DTI and what the DA are doing and the NEDA to help our farmers and fisher folks to make sure that they are not affected in a bad way, and in fact, they should benefit from it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
When is my hearing? I have a hearing on April 13. I invite all of you.
Anyway, ma'am, nakalimutan ko lang i-follow up sa'yo, ma'am. Tatanong ka? Tatanong ka? Okay. Ayayo pa ko DWI.
Ma'am, good morning. Tatanong ko lang ko yung function ng DNR. Ang dami na ho kasi yung mga bundok ngayon ng nakalbo na. Mas kalbo pa sa akin. Yung ibang bundok naman, naging burol na. Wala nang puno eh.
Masyadong modulated. Baba ng konti mikropono.
Ayan po, ayan.
Konti taas, konti taas.
Mas-
Hindi, konting taas.
Kunting taas.
Ayan, okay po.
Okay.
Diba, radyo talaga eh.
Yung itatanong ko po ano ang function ng DNR? Bakit nagkaganito ang ating kalikasan sa bansa? Ang mga bundok ay wala ng mga puno. Ang ibang bundok ay napatag na dahil sa quarrying. At sa Zambales, ganun din ang nangyayari. Paki-educate nyo nga po kami. Ano ba talagang function ng DNR?
Ang DNR, maraming bureau, maraming ahensya sa ilalim niya, kasama na ang mga regional offices, kasama na rin ang Environmental Management Bureau, kasama ang Biodiversity Management Bureau, kasama na rin ang Solid Waste Commission, marami po. Sa tingin ko, sa mga nakaraang taon, kundi dekada, ay hindi naging sapat ang kanilang ginagawa para ipatupad ang ating mga batas. Ano ito? Clean Air Act. Presko ba ang inyong what do you, what do you call this? Ano yung Tagalog? Nilalanghap na hangin. Hindi. What is the air quality in Metro Manila? In Manila, where we are, I've asked that in the previous hearing. We will find out, ang kanilang air monitors ba ay umaandar? Nakukuha ba natin sa ating mga app ang mga kalidad na ating nilalanghap na hangin? I asked that of a DNR. Number 2, Clean Water Act. Ang ating Tulian River ba? Malinis. Ang ating Malabon, Navotas River or San Juan River or Pasig River from Laguna de Bay. Malinis ba ang ating mga karagatan at lawa at ilog ay kailangan ipatupad at maging stricto. Ecological Solid Waste Management, RA 9003, ay pinapatupad ba ito, hindi lamang ng DNR, kundi lahat ng mga lokal na pamahalaan? Ay alam ko, 25% lang ng LGUs ang sumusunod sa paghihiwalay ng basura sa nabubulok at hindi nabubulok. This law institutionalizes the segregation of waste at source, recycling, and composting. 3 pa yan, ha? 10 ang ginawa kong batas. INIPAS, Expanded National Integrated Protected Area System, kung saan gumawa tayo ng 94 na karagdagan na protected area sa ating bansa na dapat protektahan ang mga kabundukan at ang kanilang biodiversity, flora at fauna. Ito ba talaga ay nababantayan? So, sa totoo lang, hindi madali ang kanilang trabaho. Naintindihan ko na hindi nila kayang gawin lahat. That's why I always say, ang pangangalaga sa kalikasan na siyang nag-aalaga sa atin para sa ating pagkain at kabuhayan is a whole of nation approach. It is not the role of just one agency of government. But I can see that they could be trying, but it may not be enough because we have so many environmental laws which are being violated on the ground or even as I speak now. So there's so much to be done, much, much more. Perhaps they're doing their best, but we should all help each other. And it's not just one agency implementing environmental laws. It could be all agencies. It could be the private sector. It should be all of us in a whole of government, a whole of society approach.
Sa mga nabanggit nyo, ma'am, parang wala kami naramdaman, ha?
Sabihin mo sa radyo, interviewin mo ako at isa-isahin natin yan. Which,
reaction lang doon
brings
sa
me,
ano, ma'am?
no, ito lang baka.
Yung isa pa.
Ipat gawa tayo.
Reaction lang doon sa tuloy-tuloy
Oversight
ngayong
on the implementation.
reclamation dito sa Manila Bay.
Hay nako. Nakikita ko nga mula sa aking
Senado.
opisina.
Oo.
Yeah. So hindi na makikita ng
Manila
mga susunod
sunset.
na taon ang ating sunset, but I don't know who's doing it. But then they were given permits by DNR in the previous administration. So what do we do?
Nilagyan ng construction na structure doon.
Yeah. Siguro next time mo kayo mag-press con dahil
Yung isang agency na pera sa Philippines na reclamation authority.
I think to ask Senator Villar, siyang eksperto dyan. Yeah.
Iba nagagalit si Senator Villar noon sa
Yeah.
mga reclamation dyan. Anyways, Mads, SM9.
Net 25, ma'am.
Net 25.
Opo. Senator, balikan ko lang po yung sa lupubog na MP Princess Empress. Tingin niyo po ba, panahon na talaga para palitan po yung ruta, yung mga dumadaan na barko, hindi na dapat padaanin doon sa Verde Island para maiwasan na po yung ganitong kalaki pong pinsala?
It's not for me to decide kung saan dadaan ang mga barko because syempre inter-island shipping, pagdala ng ating mga goods sa ating mga isla ay prioridad para sa kabuhayan ng mga tao. Pero yung kalidad ng mga barko at mga vessels ay kailangan chinecheck ng Marina. Kailangan chinecheck ng DOTR PCG, ang Coast Guard. Hindi dapat pinapabayaan ang overloading, hindi dapat hinahayaan na sira at pag may malaking wave ay tataob na lang or mabubutas o madaling masira. So, with regards to routes, it's not for me to say, change it. No. That's a knee-jerk reaction. But, if there are alternate routes that are as efficient, why not? But, it's not just the Verde Island Passage. Lahat naman ng lugar sa karagatan, mahalaga eh. Kasi nga, archipelago tayo, di ba? Kasi nga, we have, but the Verde Island Passage is part of the center of biodiversity, and while it is not a legislated protected area, it is a protected area. So whether you're passing by the VIP or passing elsewhere, we must have safety measures, not just for those on board the vessels, but also for those living off the waters in the islands or in the mainland. So sumunod lang ng high standards so that we don't have non-seaworthy vessels plying the routes.
Ma'am, yung Coast Guard po, susuportahan niyo po ba if ever na humingi sila ng dagdag na pondo? Kasi sinasabi nila, ang dami nilang kulang na gamit sa pagtugon sa oil spill. Like yung malalaking oil spill boom, yung ROP, wala din sila.
Of course, we must support the Coast Guard, the Philippine Coast Guard. We're a maritime nation, and we should support them not just in equipment and resources, but also in building capacity and know-how, the human skills and knowledge. Technology should be used. Yes, the equipment, but also how to use the equipment. What are the easiest, fastest, safest, most efficient ways to curb an accident, an oil spill when it happens? I would not know. I would be happy to know. There must be low-tech, inexpensive, natural ways to curb it. Siya sa atin dati natin ng indigenous knowledge, pero wala pang oil ba nun? Tignan natin. So, yes, I would be, perhaps the OST can also be brought in, hindi ba? Hindi lamang ang Coast Guard, kundi na rin, alamin natin sa DOST, ano ba ang mga sinauna? Or, kung ano ang ginagawa ng ibang bansa na hindi masyadong mahal, o kung mahal, bilhin. Kakayanin ba? Kayanin. Pero yung kaalaman ay dapat din i-build, hindi lamang in terms of equipment. Pero, the best way is to prevent accidents. Kaya kailangan seaworthy ang vessels. Kailangan huwag mag-overloading at kailangan alam yung agarang gagawin pag may nangyaring aberya.
Good morning, ma'am. Mayroon aga, ma'am. Alvin from Euro TV News. I would like to get your statement, ma'am, kasi yung Department of Energy has logged the biggest electricity savings during this year's Earth Hour, which registers almost or at least 63 megawatts. Anong reaction niyo po dito, ma'am?
As a principal author of the Energy Conservation Law, I'll just check. I'm the principal author. Yes. Energy Conservation and Efficiency Act, is that the official title? Yes. In my third term, it was Senator Sherwin Gatchalian who sponsored, nakasaksak ang aircon, electric fan, o anuman. Tanggalin, because that still generates electricity and you pay for it. So why would you want to pay for something you don't use? Kala ng iba, pag i-off mo lang, okay na. Hindi, basta nakakabit yan sa switch, naka-on. Tapos yung mga standby na switches, may pula, may bayad yun. So, IEC, Information, Education, Communications, Energy, Efficiency, and Conservation. Batas yan eh. Earth Hour, that's just 1 hour in 24 hours. Things we can do. It's just a drop in the bucket, but it's good. So yes, nakatipid tayo sa isang oras na yan ng ganyan. So, we have a law. Again, let's make our laws work. Right? Let's make our laws work. Because these laws are meant to help us live sustainable lives in our planet. Right? Energy Conservation Act. It promotes energy efficiency. It means, kamukha yan, kung hindi naman kailangan ng ilaw, pag alis natin, isasarado mo si studio light. Buksan lahat ng blinds, natural light, kaysa yung naka-pin light ay naka-on. I don't think there's tax implications. Part of it is the conservation of the use of electric power.
Resulta from FTBC. I have two questions. Israel has technology which cleans and purifies water, whatever kind, whether murky or salty.
Yeah.
Do you think the government, our nation, should start investing in such an innovation?
I had a meeting recently with the ambassadors of Singapore and Israel. All aspects of diplomacy for water, for climate, for environment, for our economy, for agriculture. Yes, we should learn, we should engage, we should ask them to help for donations or even purchase. Yes.
One more, Senator. We always ask foreign investors to come in. But one thing that's been missing out is that the cost of our electricity is the highest in ASEAN. How do you think we should handle this?
There are two things. The availability of efficient and clean power, and second, the cost. First, I am, of course, for the transition to clean, renewable energy. Second, it must be affordable and cheaper than fossil fuel. And it's already cheap, and it's already clean and available. So we have the law, again, since 2008, the Renewable Energy Law. So it's just a matter, again, for cooperatives all over the country. They still contract diesel fuel for their generators in certain areas. But we can see already companies transitioning to clean, renewable energy. Now, regarding the cost, it should not be more costly, and in fact, dapat buwaba ang presyo dahil libre ang hangin at libre ang tubig at libre ang init ng araw, hindi ba? Kaya nga renewable is cleaner and cheaper
Okay.
than imported fossil fuel.
Amor, wait,
Ma'am, related lang po dun sa nabanggit nyo, ang init nga po ngayon. Dun po sa Laguna, there were students na hospitalized after showing signs of dehydration and heat exhaustion daw po. And then, si Senator Win po, ang proposal po niya ay ibalik yung school calendar. Dapat daw po ang break ay April and May na ulit. Do you
Okay.
agree with that?
before you answer that question, Madam, meron lang akong interjection. Don't go far away. Your son, your own son. Solar power.
But I don't want to mention kasi that's private business para hindi ko naman gamitin yung press conference for private business. But of course, he's doing very, very well. He's a good visionary, very hardworking. But that's all I will say so that my work is different from the work of my son. Diba? But I fully, of course, I'm proud of a very young visionary.
Yes. Okay, ma'am. Okay, Amor.
Sa pagbalik po ng school calendar, ma'am, dun sa dati, which is
April,
summer break, yung break ng mga estudyante, yung summer ulit.
We'll see. Baka ma-confuse na yung ating mga estudyante at mga ano. But yes, kakalipat lang ng calendar tapos babalik na naman tayo. But it's worth looking into because of our weather patterns.
Sorry ma'am, last question na lang po.
Yeah, last na.
Would you care to react po ma'am? Kasi si President Marcos po, ang sabi po niya, the country daw po is ending all of our involvement with the International Criminal Court following po yung pag-reject ng ICC nung appeal ng bansa na suspend yung probe on the drug war nung panahon ni former President Duterte.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
So we're ending all communications.
Disengage. Use the words.
Yung exact quote po
Yeah.
ng President
I-
Marcos, we don't have a next move. That is the extent of our involvement with the ICC. That ends all our involvement with the ICC.
Well, I have to see the official statement of the president. You know, he's a president of a country, and I respect his opinion. But I think in the Senate then, I was the one who sponsored as chair of the Foreign Relations Committee.
Yes,
The
before.
ICC, was it? Yeah, the time. It would be difficult for me to give my opinion on that now. I still have to see the official statement of our chief executive.
Kasi nag-appeal yata kay sa Supreme Court, di ba? Na the Senate has the sole authority to nullify the ratified treaty.
It was, yes, I think I sponsored it. So I have to look back because that was in my second term. I respect his position. I still have to read the official statement. I think I saw it in the headlines today. And I have to look back also on our sponsorship way back, 15 years ago.
But ano po yung stand niyo dun sa ginawa din po before na pag-address dun sa ICC?
Withdrawal.
Withdrawal.
Nag-appeal nga sila sa Supreme Court.
Sa
Eh.
ICC.
I have to check my records on the Senate's action because we sponsored it nga 15 years ago and the contents of my sponsorship, and I have to read the fine print of the president's decision. It's not, I have to see if it aligns or not. So I will withhold any statements regarding the ICC. Yeah, thanks.
For your closing remarks.
It's been very engaging, interesting, all the varied subject matters from environment and climate to the economy and jobs and culture and foreign relations, etc.
Don't forget fashion.
Yeah, of
Filipino
slow fashion, right, and slow food, right, and heritage. So wala sigurong hindi nyo na naitanong, pero hindi sapat ang oras. Ako'y nagagalak na makasama kayo ngayong araw na ito. Namimiss ko ang 100 camera na nakatutok sa akin dito. Yan ang kinalakihan ko mula nung ako'y teenager pa. At natutuwa ako makaharap ang mga camera ninyo at mga cameraman. Pero tayo yata'y naka-Facebook Live.
Yes.
Kaya kaming mga lumaki sa TV na hindi namin nakikita ang audience sa likod ng camera dahil live kami via satellite sa television, ay dapat masanay na merong online platform. Kaya dapat, yun, maging, ano din ako, Huwag tactless, di ba? Kasi live on social media. No, but it's nice. So, again, we're on Facebook Live, right?
Yes.
Which is my camera on Facebook Live. I want to address them where? Point.
Sa Facebook.
Live din kayo.
Kapihan.
So, even on the Senate website. Okay. So, all those watching us on Facebook Live, on the Senate Facebook, and on my Loren Facebook, mamaya, meron akong Facebook Live, yung tablet naman, kasi I give away tablets, gadgets every week sa mga nakakailangan estudyante at nanay mamayang alauna. Kaya,
Saan?
online. Pinipili ko sila every Wednesday, alauna, nag-Facebook Live ako, FB Live, kasi may final akong bill na one tablet, one student act. Hindi pa na isa sa batas, kaya maski hindi, sa aking personal na lang na paraan, nabibigay ako ng tablet sa mga nangangailangang nanay para sa kanilang mga anak. Kaya mamaya, kita-kits tayo ng alauna sa aking Facebook para sa pamimigay ng tablet or gadget. But in the meantime, more than a tablet and a gadget, lahat ng mga aral na natutunan nyo sana sa ating mga diskusyon kasama si Itchu at sa lahat ng ating mga kaibigan sa media. Salamat sa inyo. Sana palagi niyong basahin ang ating mga press release, ang ating mga letrato, ang ating mga aral at speeches at polisiya at mga panukalang batas sa aking Facebook page, sa aking Instagram, sa aking website, sa lahat ng mga platforms. Nagpapasalamat ako sa mga nag-online at sa mga komento nyo. Babasahin ko mamaya ang komento nyo, maganda man o hindi maganda, pero sana maganda lahat. Yeah. So, uminom kayo ng tubig at magtanim ng gulay na pwedeng kainin at support local, buy local sa mga local stores at magresikulo ng inyong mga bote, lata o plastic at magpakabait. At magkaroon ng malasakit sa ating mga sarili, magkaroon ng malasakit sa kapaligiran. Yes, yes. At patayin na yung studio light. Kanina pa ako nasisilaw. Kung patayin mo yan, madilim ba tayo?
Yes.
Patayin mo nga, palingin. Ayan! Hindi kasi yung puti, nakakasilaw. Kanina pa yan eh. Isang oras na tayo dito. Patayin mo, patingin. Patay, patay. Patay ang ilaw. Ayan. Madilim eh. Oh, kita pa naman ako. Alam mo, kung itaas nyo, kung tinaas nyo yung blinds, at wala yun, natural light, mas maganda tayo. Tingnan mo, taas nyo. I will end this on an energy conservation note. Itaas nyo ang blinds, patayin yung light, at mas maganda ang natural light. Then we would have conserved thousands of pesos. Yan, taas nyo.
Natural light.
See? See? O yan.
Next
Tinuturuan ko kayo
next
ng
time.
conservation. Taas pa, taas pa.
Next
See?
time. Oo.
Iimbitahin ko kayo sa aking opisina. Ang aking opisina sa Senado ay isang sustainable space. Meron pa kaming maliit na gulayan.
Saan? Office?
Okay? Isa sa mga staff ko magsalita. Sheridan, alika dito. Kunin mo yung mikropono ni Miss Itchu. Ikwento mo lang, maikli lang, 30 seconds. Parang reporter na 30 seconds. Ano yung gulayan natin sa tanggapan natin?
Apo, doon po sa opisina po namin sa Senate, meron po kaming balcony doon na pinagawa po si Senator Loren. Meron kami doon, marami kami doon halaman, kasama po doon yung aming vertical garden. So, meron kami doon mga litsugas, mga lettuce, pechay. Apo, ayun po, so,
Tayo ng gulay mamaya kung lettuce at litsugas lang alam mo. Okay.
ayun, okra po, tapos,
Sige. Okay. Okay. Sige, tuturuan pa kita. Sige, next. Ipasa mo mikropono kay Kathleen. Okay, Kathleen, dito naman. Okay. Pag pumasok ka sa ating pantry sa opisina, dito ka dear, paano ang ating mga basurahan? Sige, take off your mask. Paliwanag mo sa kanila. Maikli lang. Kwento mo lang yung basurahan natin sa pantry.
Sa opisina po namin, sa 6th floor and 5th floor, pinapractice po namin yung batas ni Senator na RA 9003 or Ecological Solid Waste Management Law, kung saan pinaghihiwa-hiwalay po namin yung mga nabubulok sa di nabubulok, sa latak at sa mga tissue waste po.
Ano pa ang sinesegregate na waste?
RA
RA 9003
Hindi,
po.
ano nga yung mga hinihiwalay na waste? Ilang trash bins ang meron
Apat po.
tayo?
Apat, ma'am.
Ano yung apat?
Tissue waste, recyclable,
Anong pwedeng maresikulo?
bote, lata, plastic, ma'am.
Okay, ano pa?
Hindi na re-resikulo.
Okay.
At yung huli po ay yung mga tirang pagkain, ma'am.
Yes. Ang yung tirang pagkain, ginagawang ano?
Binabon po sa lupa, pwede po siyang gawing pataba sa mga pananiman.
Very good. Nakapasa. Kasi matagal, ilang taong ka na sa akin?
Going for this year, ma'am.
Kasi naturuan na, kaya alam, yung R pati 90. Ano yung suot mo?
Ito po ay galing sa Antique.
See?
Patadyong po ito, ma'am.
Slow fashion.
Yes,
Okay, ano yung patadyong? Kwento mo sa kanila.
Yung patadyong po, isa po yun sa mga sinuportahan ni Senator Loren nung siya po ay naging kongresista sa Antique. Yun po ay almost dying tradition na po sa Antique, pero nung naging congressman po siya, binuhay niya po yun at binigyan niya po ng maraming suporta yung mga mananahe po, yung mga women embroidery doon. Ngayon po, marami na po nagsusuot ng patadyong sa Antique at maging dito sa Metro Manila.
Okay, very good. Nakapasa si Kathleen. Shari, punta rito, dear. Okay.
Totoo yan si Loren, lahat ng mga staff niyang are
Okay.
now going places.
Okay, sige. Tanggal ang mask. Napag-usapan na yung ating vertical garden, napag-usapan na yung ating mga basurahan sa pantry, napag-usapan ng patadyong, anong pwede mo pang sabihin sa suporta ko sa maliliit na negosyo para magkaroon ng kabuhayan ng mga tao, hindi lamang sa Antique, sa buong Pilipinas, yung aking ginagawang mga programa para magkaroon ng kabuhayan ng mga tao. Kwento lang.
Si Senator Legarda po, marami po siyang mga proyekto under several agencies, kagaya po ng pagpapatayo ng weaving centers. Nakapagpatayo na po siya ng weaving center. Sa ilalim ng PhilFida, meron po niyan sa Antique, meron din po yan sa... meron po tayong mga weaving centers at cotton processing centers gaya na nabanggit po ni Senator kanina. Halimbawa po sa Antique, ang cotton processing center natin ay nakalocate po sa Patnongon at ang area po na yon nakakapagpatanim na po ng sarili nilang cotton at pinaprocess na rin po doon ang cotton at ginagamit na rin po yung cotton na yun para makapagpagawa po ng mga damit at mga textiles po. Bukod po rito, sa tulong din po ni Senator Legarda, nakapagbigay din po siya ng pondo para po sa shared services facilities. Ito po ay isang programa ng Department of Trade and Industry kung saan nakapagbibigay po sila ng equipment sa mga maliliit po na negosyo depending po sa pangangailangan nila. Halimbawa po, nakapagbibigay po ang DTI under this program, the SSF, ng mga equipment para sa gawa ng kape, yung pagpaprocess po, even yun pong pagtatahi, yung sewing machines po natin. Bukod, may dole pang... sige ma'am, may DOST CES din po, kung saan nasuportahan din po ito ni Senator Legarda. Ito po ay isang programa ng Department of Science and Technology, Community Empowerment through Science and Technology. Kagaya rin po ng DTI, nagpo-provide po ang DOST CES ng training tsaka ng equipment po para po sa mga maliliit na negosyo. Depende po yan sa forte ng komunidad po. Paano po yung kanilang nagagawa doon.
Hindi lang Antique ang hindi lang Antique ang ating tinutulungan, ikwento mo pa yung tulong ko, let's say, sa mga kababaihan ng Tawi-Tawi hanggang sa malalayong lugar ay tinutulungan natin. Ano yon? Kwento mo. Para tayong exam sa Facebook Live.
Isa po sa komunidad na natutulungan po ni ma'am ay yung pong mga kababaihan na gumagawa po ng tutup. These are food covers po na ginagawa sa Sibuto Island po sa Tawi-Tawi. Natutulungan po ito ni ma'am sa pamamagitan ng NCCA po. At sila rin po ay nadala na rin po ni ma'am sa National Museum, nakapag-ano rin po sila.
Maliban sa Sibuto Island sa Tawi-Tawi, saan pa tayo tumutulong? Let's say sa Cordillera, anong mapipili mong probinsya at yung mga natutulungan natin para sa kabuhayan sa rehiyon ng Cordillera, anong probinsya? Yan, kaya mo yan sagutin.
Ma'am, Ifugao po. Sa Ifugao, nandun po halimbawa si Sami Bule at ang kanyang ina, kung saan si Sami Bule ay tanyag na mananahi, gumagawa po siya ng ikat, isa pong textile doon po sa lugar na iyon, at si Sami Bule po ay lately nakasama sa Venice Biennale, isa na po siyang sikat na tanyag na weaver, na artisan, kung saan ipinakita po niya ang kanyang paghahabi sa isang exhibition po doon. Ang pangalan po ay Andi Taku. At kakatapos...
Paano ko natulungan ang mag-inang weaver na taga Ifugao?
Ma'am, ano po, natulungan niyo po sila way back po nung binisita niyo po sila, humingi po sila ng tulong sa inyo sapagkat isa pong ahensya ang sinusubukang kunin yung dying vat mula sa kanila at ang ginawa niyo po ay binigyan niyo po sila ng tulong, binayaran niyo po yung vat na yun para hindi po makumpiska, ma'am.
Okay. Nung panahon ng pandemya, isa sa mga natulungan natin ay gumawa ng mga PPE, kababaihan sa Quezon City. Ikwento mo.
Sige, ma'am. Ito po ay under SSF also, Shared Service Facility. Meron pong, I think, 3 organizations kung saan ang ginagawa po nila, si Senator Legarda ang nag-provide po ng equipment para yung pong mga kababaihan ay makapaghabi or makagawa po ng PPE na nagamit din po during pandemic, ma'am.
Hindi hinahabi. No, DTI SSF through Spark, remember? Hindi. Ikwento mo sa Quezon City. O, hindi habi yan, hindi weavers yan din. Correct mo?
Gumagawa, ma'am. Gumagawa ng PPE po through Spark na isang organisasyon na pinamumunuan po ni Miss Micah.
Basta tinetest ko lang staff, hindi sila rehearsed para matuto silang magsalita sa mikropono, sa Facebook Live. Ay, si Twinkle nandito? Ay, hindi ko nakita si Twinkle kanina. Kakarating lang?
Saka si Tina Stoner.
Ay, long time no see. Ganda pa rin ni Twinkle, oh. Teka. So, just, na-shock ko yung mga staff ko. Sanay na sila sa akin. I call them, so that makita nyo na hindi lang akong may alam sa opisina na bago man, ilang buwan pa lang sa akin yung iba naman 4 years, iba 10 years, na yung aking mga batas, yung aking mga proyekto, mga programa, hanggang sa pinakasulok-sulukan ng Mindanao, sa Sibutu, hanggang sa pinakasulok-sulukan ng Cordillera, sa Kiangan, Ifugao, ay sinasa puso namin. And that's, I think, how public servants must be. I think we should ensure that lives are changed for the better so that we can say that we leave this earth in a better place than when we found it. With that, I thank Ichu for inviting me. Thank you all in Kapihan sa Cafe Adriatico.
Manila Bay. Kapi sa Manila Bay.
Kapihan sa Manila Bay. Kala ko sa Mali Adriatico. Okay, sa Manila Bay. Saan ang Bay?
There.
Saan na yung Bay?
There.
Nawala na nga yung Bay.
Natakpan na ng ano. Ng
Yeah.
Dolomite.
So, thank you so much. Mahaba. Pag may mikropono, ayaw tumigil. O sige.
Ayaw. Aim. Ayaw iwan mic.
Ayaw?
Iwan mic.
Aim. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I have to rush to the Senate before. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much po, ma'am. And next week, wala tayong, Holy Week tayo. Twinkle, halika dito.